You are 19 years old, weighing out chicken feed behind the counter of your father's store in Tulsa, Oklahoma, when the letter arrives. It's October 1944. Outside, the wind carries the first cold snap of the season down Main Street. Inside, your father is arguing with old man Pruitt about the price of nails, same as he does every Tuesday. Your girl, Dorothy, Dot to everyone who knows her, is supposed to meet you after closing so you can walk her home the long way, past Peshoas, the way you've done since junior year. You have ordinary plans. Save enough for a ring by spring. Take over the store eventually. Nothing complicated. Then the mailman sets the envelope on the counter, your name typed clean across the front, and your father goes quiet before you've even opened it. He knows government paper by feel. Your mother cries when you bring it home. Dot doesn't, not right away. She sits beside you on the porch steps and holds your wrists so tight you can feel her pulse in her fingers instead of your own. The letter gives you 14 days to report. The morning you leave, Dot presses a photograph into your hand. The two of you at the county fair the summer before, her laughing at something out of frame, you looking at her instead of the camera. On the back she's written 6 words: "Come home before the wheat's cut."
You slide it into your breast pocket. It stays there through training, across an ocean, and onto a beach where almost everything else you're issued will end up lost, burned, or buried in sand. Basic training is at Camp Pendleton. They shave your head, take your name, and give you a number, and teach you to move before you're allowed to think. You crawl under live machine gun fire while instructors shout that the rounds are real, because fear is the only lesson that sticks. That's where you meet Sammy Klein from Chicago, whose father runs a tailor shop, and who can describe a decent suit the way other men describe a good meal. Sammy carries his grandfather's pocket watch, stopped at 4:17 for reasons he won't explain, and opens the case to check a time that never changes whenever his hands need something to do. Your platoon sergeant is Frank Rourke, 28 but carrying the face of a much older man, a veteran of Guadalcanal who doesn't raise his voice because he's never needed to. The ones who talk the most about killing, he tells you the first week, are usually the first ones to freeze. He nods toward Sammy, who's mid-story about a wedding suit he once altered 4 times for the same nervous groom. That one talks enough for 3 men. He'll be fine. Sammy grins like he's been paid a compliment.
You believe Rourke because he talks like a man who's already seen how the story ends. The weeks that follow blur into a routine of exhaustion. Bayonet drills at dawn, forced marches through Carolina pine woods with full packs, night exercises where you're taught to move without sound across ground designed to betray every footstep. Rourke runs you through amphibious landing drills more times than anyone else in the company, climbing down cargo nets into the surf until the motion becomes something your body knows without your mind's permission. An island doesn't care how brave you are, he tells you once, watching a recruit fumble the net and drop hard into the water below. It only cares whether you can move fast and think slow. You don't fully understand what he means until months later, standing in sand that swallows your boots whole.
Months later, you cross the Pacific aboard a troop transport, so crowded men sleep in rotating shifts, the air below deck thick with oil and heat and too many bodies. Somewhere past Hawaii, word moves through the ship about where you're headed, a volcanic island 8 square miles wide that nobody back home has ever heard of, defended, the briefings say, more heavily than almost anywhere else in the Pacific. Officers show you sand table models with elevation lines and a mountain marked at the southern tip, Suribachi. Sammy studies it and says, they drew arrows straight up the side, like the Japanese are going to step aside and let us walk up. Rourke doesn't laugh at that one either. On February 19, 1945, before dawn, the naval bombardment starts, a sound like the whole ocean tearing. You're told the shelling will flatten every defense on the island before you ever set foot on the beach. You climb down the cargo net into a landing craft with 30 other men, packed so heavy with ammunition, water, and rations that they feel built to drown you. The boat drops into rough water and turns toward a shoreline you can barely see through smoke, black sand, a mountain looming at one end, and a haze that makes it impossible to tell where the shelling stopped and the island began. The ramp drops.
The volcanic sand isn't like anything you trained on. Soft, ash black, swallowing your boots to the ankle with every step. turning a sprint into something closer to wet cement. Men around you go down before they've moved 10 feet, not from enemy fire you can see, but from an island that seems to be fighting you on its own. Sammy is beside you, then he isn't, swallowed into the chaos of bodies moving in every direction at once. You throw yourself behind a low ridge of sand that offers nothing close to real cover, because bad cover still feels better than none. There is no clean order to any of it. Radios are out, officers are scattered. Rourke finds you and 3 others behind the ridge and simply says, "Move when I move," which becomes the only plan anyone has left. Japanese positions dug into the volcanic rock are nearly invisible, pillboxes and tunnels that let defenders vanish and reappear from ground that looks empty a second before it isn't. You watch a tank get chewed apart by a gun nobody can locate. You watch men fall to fire from directions that make no sense until you understand the whole island is honeycombed beneath your feet. A corpsman works on a wounded man a few yards from your position, hands moving fast and steady even as rounds kick up sand around both of them.
You learn quickly that the corpsmen are targeted more than almost anyone else on the beach, and that they keep working anyway, because stopping means someone else doesn't make it off the sand. Rourke orders you to lay down covering fire toward a ridgeline while 2 men drag a wounded private back toward the aid station, and you do it without thinking, the way training intended, your hands performing a task your mind hasn't fully caught up to yet. You find Sammy again near a shell crater, breathing too hard to speak, the pocket watch already out of his pocket and open in his palm, like checking the frozen time might tell him something useful. 4:17, he says, half a laugh in it. Still 4:17. Rourke pulls you both forward before you can answer him. By the second day, the beach is a graveyard of burned equipment, and men still moving through it anyway, because staying still has become its own kind of death. You push inland a few dozen yards at a time, taking positions that cost more than they seem worth, losing them sometimes within the hour. A private near you, a replacement who arrived only days before, 17 the way half these replacements secretly are, takes a fragment to the leg from a mine buried under sand that looked exactly like every other patch of sand around it. He keeps apologizing, the way wounded men do, for something that was never his fault. Nights on the island bring no real rest. Japanese soldiers move through tunnels beneath positions you thought were secured hours earlier, appearing behind lines that had already been declared clear. You learn to sleep in shifts with a rifle across your chest, waking at sounds your body recognizes before your mind does. Sammy stops talking about food entirely somewhere around the 3rd day, which worries you more than anything he could have said instead. He still opens the watch case every few hours though, thumb running the same worn groove along the edge, checking a time that refuses to move. On the 4th day, your squad is ordered toward a ridge overlooking the base of Suribachi, meant to support the push toward the mountain itself. Rourke leads from the front the way he has every day since the landing, checking each man's position before his own. A machine gun opens up from a position dug so deep into the rock it might as well be part of the mountain. Rourke goes down before anyone can call it out. You and Sammy reach him at the same time. The wound is low, through the side, worse than either of you wants to say out loud. "Case," Sammy says without thinking, pulling out a field dressing instead. Rourke's hand finds Sammy's wrist, not to stop the bandage, but to hold on to something steady. He doesn't waste breath on anything sentimental. "Watch says 4:17, he manages, almost amused by it even now. "Fix that damn thing when this is over." Sammy tells him he will. Rourke's grip loosens. He's gone before the corpsman reaches the ridge. You leave him there, because the position is still under fire, and staying means joining him. For the rest of your life, you will remember exactly how it felt to pull Sammy away from that spot. Not the blood, not the noise, but Sammy's arm fighting against your hand. Some part of him still convinced that leaving is a kind of betrayal the war hasn't taught him yet. 2 days later, you're part of the group that watches from a distance as a small flag goes up on the summit of Suribachi, and then again, hours later, a second and larger one raised in its place. The men around you cheer, and you find yourself cheering too, though it takes you a moment to understand you're crying while you do it. The mountain is only the first third of the island. The fighting will continue for nearly a month more, grinding through terrain the maps never adequately described,
But for one afternoon, the flag on the summit means something has been paid for and held, even if you can't yet say the price was worth it. Sammy changes after Rourke. He still opens the watch case out of habit, but he stops joking about the frozen hands. Before each advance, he touches it once, the way another man might touch a rosary, and says nothing at all. You ask him once what he's thinking. He says that I want it fixed before I go home, not after. You don't ask him what he means by that, though you understand it well enough. The island is declared secure by late March, though secure feels like the wrong word for ground that still holds men in tunnels beneath your boots for weeks after.
You and Sammy are among the ones who make it off the black sand and back onto a ship, thinner, quieter, carrying gear that no longer feels like it belongs to the men who were issued it 8 weeks earlier. Sammy never gets the watch fixed on the island. He keeps saying there will be time later, in Guam, in the hospital ship, once things settle. There is always a reason to wait. He never gets the chance. Weeks later, staged for the invasion that will never come because Japan surrenders first, a training accident on Guam, a grenade that shouldn't have been live, a mistake nobody survives long enough to explain, takes Sammy and 2 other men in a stretch of jungle nowhere near a real battlefield. You are given his effects to send home, a few letters, a tailor's measuring tape he'd kept as a joke, and the pocket watch, still frozen at 17 minutes past 4. You carry the watch back across the Pacific yourself instead of mailing it, because some promises don't feel like they belong in a package. Dot's photograph is still in your breast pocket when the troop ship finally reaches San Francisco in the fall of 1945, the wheat long since cut and gone. You are 20 years old and feel considerably older than your father looked the day the draft letter came. Coming home doesn't feel the way you imagined it would on the ship.
Your mother cries at the station. Your father holds your shoulder and says nothing, because he understands silence better than most men his age. Dot looks almost exactly like her photograph, and entirely different at the same time. She runs to you, and you feel relief and love, and something heavier underneath both. All of it arriving through a kind of glass you can't quite explain to her. At the store, the bell over the door rings the same as it always did. Customers still argue about the price of nails. Ordinary life continued without asking your permission, and its sameness feels less like comfort than an accusation. A truck backfires on Main Street one afternoon, and you're back on the black sand for 3 full seconds before your body remembers where it actually is. Dot learns, slowly, not to touch you without announcing it first. Some nights you wake reaching for a rifle that isn't there, certain for half a second that the bedroom ceiling is volcanic sky and not plaster. She never asks you to explain those mornings. She simply makes coffee and waits for you to come back to the room on your own. You buy the ring that winter, but leave it in a drawer for months before you finally give it to her, because some part of you still isn't sure you deserve the future you'd promised her from a hardware store counter a lifetime ago.
One evening she finds you on the porch with Sammy's watch open in your palm, and she asks, gently, what it is. You tell her, not everything, not all at once, but enough. About Sammy, about Rourke, about the watch that was supposed to get fixed before he went home, instead of after. She doesn't tell you to put it away. She closes your fingers around it and says only, then fix it. For him. You take it to a jeweler the following week. He opens the case, examines the movement, and tells you it's a simple repair, a gear that slipped, nothing more. When you pick it up the following Saturday, the hands are moving again, keeping honest time for the first time in over a year. You don't wear it. You keep it in your desk drawer, wound and running, because it felt wrong to let it stop again, and wrong somehow to wear a dead friend's grandfather's watch on your own wrist. You marry Dot that spring. You take over the store from your father the way you always planned to, though the plan feels different now, smaller in some ways, heavier in others. You have 2 children who grow up knowing their father fought in the Pacific, the way other kids know their fathers fought wherever they fought, as a fact, not a memory. Iwo Jima is a photograph in a history book to them, black and white, a flag on a mountain.
They don't know about the black sand swallowing your boots, or Rourke's grip on Sammy's wrist, or the 17 minutes past 4 that meant something only the 3 of you ever understood. At 68, you fly to Hawaii with Dot for what the papers call a reunion of Pacific veterans, old men and windbreakers standing where young men once weren't expected to grow old at all. You don't make it back to the island itself, few of the men your age do, but you bring Sammy's watch with you anyway, wound and ticking in your jacket pocket the way Dot's photograph once rode across an ocean in the other direction. Standing at a memorial wall with names carved into stone that include menus served beside, you take the watch out and hold it, the way Sammy used to, thumb tracing the worn edge of the case out of habit rather than need. Dot stands quietly beside you, the way she has learned to over 4 decades of these silences, not needing an explanation for what your face is doing while you read a name near the middle of a long column. Somewhere behind you, a group of much younger men, sailors on leave maybe, or grandsons of veterans who couldn't make the trip themselves, pass by talking and laughing about something ordinary, and the sound of it doesn't feel like an intrusion the way it once might have.
It feels, instead, like proof the thing you fought for actually arrived. For years, you believed keeping your promise meant only fixing the mechanism, getting the hands moving again. Standing here now, you understand it was always something larger than that. It meant carrying him forward the way he never got the chance to carry himself. Telling your children about Sammy and Rourke before you ever told them about yourself. Making sure 2 men who ran out of time were remembered by someone who still had some left. The watch keeps ticking in your palm, quiet and steady. 17 minutes past 4 no longer meaning anything except a repair finished on a promise kept. You close your hand around it, take Dot's arm, and walk back toward whatever ordinary afternoon is still waiting for the 2 of you, the way one always somehow was, even when you couldn't believe it yet.